And there was a time in this country, a long time ago, when reading wasn't just for fags, and neither was writing. People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting, and I believe that time can come again.
Hello and welcome to the Think Liberty podcast. This is episode 59, and I'm Jim Acosta here at the southern border wall to show you just how safe things really are. Joining me on this episode, we've got the man, the myth, the LNC officer, official. What is that? What's your title?
The at-large libertarian, as they like to call me over on Spike's show.
There you go. So Joshua Smith is joining us on this episode. If you're a longtime listener, you're familiar with Josh. He used to be on our show all the time in the beginning before he got super important and busy with all of his Libertarian Party business. How you doing, Josh?
I'm hanging in there, buddy. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
getting over sickness. So if anybody hears my voice is a little deeper, it's because I basically almost died of pneumonia for 2 weeks. So
voice is a little deeper, as if that's even possible.
Yeah.
Well, the plus side is you're making me sound like a 12-year-old over here.
There you go. There you go. And
who are you?
That 12-year-old with the buttery vocal cords there would be TJ Eckert. TJ, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate your opinion journalism.
Yeah, no problem. Everything's looking real safe down here at the border. That was the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen.
I heard it was a national emergency, quite possibly, going on down there at the border.
That's what they say.
People trying to come over here for some bread, and it's an invasion.
That's what he says. Yeah, everyone.
You think he knew how bad he was playing himself when he did that, or
no way? No way.
What are you guys talking about? It's 4D chess. He's playing 4D chess.
No, we're talking about Acosta down at the border. Did you see that video?
Acosta.
When he went?
No, I have not seen it.
Okay, so Acosta goes down. We covered this on one of the other episodes that you'd have heard if you listen. But anyway,
I listen to something. You're 59. What do you want from me?
I know. So anyway, Acosta goes down to the border in like Texas, I think, right? Keep me honest here, TJ. He goes down to the border in Texas, and he's standing there at the border, and he's at a part of the border that has a wall. And he's walking along the border, and he's like, "Look, everything looks pretty safe here. No issues." So, Trump says that, the border is a battleground, and I'm not seeing any problem. And like everyone and their dog on social media, like responded, "That's because there's a wall there, Jim."
Yeah, like it was bad. He even said at one point, he was like, he's like, here's the wall. I don't even see any immigrants trying to get past it,
Right.
I was like, wow, maybe it's the fucking wall.
And then Trump,
what an idiot.
And then Trump gets on Twitter and he's like, "Yeah, Jim, it's real safe because there's a fucking wall there, Jim." It was just great. It's like, you can't. They're just.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Right. You played yourself.
Right. Like,
there's another one.
There's arguments to be made, but that's not the one there, Jim Bob.
Yeah. Isn't there a video, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't a video, but someone was standing down there talking about how drugs can't get across the wall, and like a bag of drugs flew over the wall and hit him in the head. Did you guys hear about that?
No,
that's
fantastic. No. How has that not like been memed? Crazy?
I swear I would have looked that up during the show, because I swear I read that somewhere, that someone was down there talking about how no drugs can get across the wall, and then like a bag of drugs like flew over the wall and hit him.
I feel like if there was a video of that, we'd see memes everywhere. Someone with like a bag of heroin flapping in their face or something like that. But I gotta go look for it now. That sounds pretty hilarious.
I'm on it. I'm already on it.
Okay,
I'm Googling.
While you do that, let's talk to TJ. You just went to LibertyCon was the name of it, right?
Yeah, LibertyCon 2019 down in DC.
Yeah, and so if anyone listening interested in that sort of thing, if you go to Being Libertarian's Facebook page, you can see if you sort by videos, there's actually we've been putting out videos here, and we got some coming next week too, or by the time you're listening to this week, with some of the interviews that TJ and some others had conducted there at LibertyCon. How'd you like it? How'd that go?
It was a good time. It was a lot of fun people. Everyone was real nice, Bill Weld went on stage and didn't get booed, surprisingly. That was strange.
That's because it wasn't a libertarian event.
No, it was cool. There were a lot of big name libertarians there. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, we did get some exclusive interviews. So, check that out at Being Libertarian.
Yeah, I know. So you had the arduous task of interviewing David Friedman.
Yeah, that was awesome. A libertarian hero of mine.
Yeah, I would have been totally nervous doing that.
I got to hang out with him yesterday. That's funny.
Did you?
Yeah, and he's definitely one of my favorites as well. So he's got a new book out.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it right now. It's pretty good so far.
I need to get that. I'm really interested in that book. It was just funny. I was watching you. I could tell you were a little nervous. You did way better than I would have been. If I would have been in that interview, I would have been like what's like Chris Farley when he's doing the movie interviews on Saturday Night Live when he was like, "Hey, remember that one time you were in that movie?" Like, yeah. He's like, that was awesome. It was so good.
Yeah, David Friedman. I was a little bit starstruck.
Yeah, remember that book you wrote, Machinery Freedom? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that one was great.
That was awesome.
No, luckily, if you talk to David Friedman a lot, he's very good at being in depth in a lot of things. So I think in the 40 minutes we talked, I asked him like 5 questions, which was great. That was my saving grace there.
Yeah. You get to fill in that space so you don't sit there and go like, so what was it like? Because your dad. Right?
Oh, no, I did not want to ask him. That was the one thing I'm like, I know everyone asked you about your dad, so I'm not going to ask you about your dad.
Right.
But no, I was fanboying on that one a little bit. Yeah.
Like, what did everyone in your house do when they had to reach something that was high up? I'm just curious.
Oh God,
they are so little. They are so little.
Very small family. But that's okay. That's
awesome.
Yeah,
he's got the best arguments for global warming. There's no doubt about it. So,
oh, does he? I haven't heard those.
Oh man, yeah. So his speech yesterday at the Libertarian Party of Santa Clara's county convention, because apparently California's so big they have county conventions. He basically his whole speech revolved around arguments that libertarians shouldn't make, which was pretty awesome. And
good. It's kind of like Tom Woods-ish.
Yeah,
that was the speech he gave at LibertyCon. It was good.
He totally blew the nap apart for me though. Like I'm a big fan of the nap. I kind of dogmatic about it, but he really
get on
put
board,
some instances in my head where I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe the nap is not supposed to be this dogmatic thing. And,
it's not.
Yeah. So, but you know how I roll.
Yeah, I got it.
It's all right. I'm still hanging on to it too. I think it's kind of dogmatic.
I know you guys are those moralist ANCAPs that are.
Yeah,
that's okay.
But I'm dying on that hill.
That's okay.
He made some really good arguments about it. The one where he's talking about if there was a madman in somewhere public shooting people, and there's a gun next to you, but the gun owner said they don't want anybody using their gun. You're still going to pick that gun up and shoot the man. You know what I mean? And that's a coercive, forceful thing against somebody else's property, where the nap applies, but you're probably going to break it, and so it makes sense. And he had some really a lot of other really good examples as well, but some of them were far-fetched, some of them made sense.
Yeah, I don't feel that those arguments are like that groundbreaking, because I feel like Rothbard covered those in For New Liberty, and I was like, all right, I don't know, that's just me.
No, he covered a ton of ground in that. Like, there's definitely ground to stand on to support the Rothbard side, and there's definitely ground to stand on to support the Friedman side. However, that would be a great topic for another podcast. We do have a topic for this evening, but before we get into it, we did so last week we kind of we jammed the schedule a bit, and we jumped in front of Liberty Bites, who normally runs on Mondays, and we ran on a Monday because of the piping hot story that seemed to have taken the nation by surprise, and that was the stand down between Nicholas Sandmann and Nathan Phillips at the Lincoln Memorial. And I did an article for Think Liberty that got a bunch of tractions. I figured, okay, well, let's strike while the iron's hot, and we'll cover this on the podcast. So we did that last week, but you guys weren't on that episode, and you didn't have a chance to share your opinion. So I was before we get into this, I just wanted to ask: did you guys? I mean, of course, you heard about it, I'm sure.
First of all, Vinny, I've had plenty of chances to share my opinion on this instance. I don't know if you've been following me on social media.
Well, you have, just not on the podcast. But yeah. So why don't you start then and tell us about your thoughts?
Well, coming from the Libertarian Party, pretty pissed off about our chairman not walking back those comments of comparing this 16-year-old to Sam Crow era racism for standing there smiling while having a drum beat in his face.
What's that, Jim Crow?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
The whole thing was just a mess. Like, everybody jumped the gun and started saying that these kids were harassing a Native American man. But when the 2-hour video came out, it was obvious that people were full of shit. And, it's just another national outrage. I mean, it's exactly what it is. And it's another divisive tactic of the media that just continues to happen. Did I say Sam Crow?
You did say
Jim Crow era. Jim Crow era is what I meant. Sorry, my bad.
Is that a whiskey? Like what?
I've been watching Sons of Anarchy way too much.
I had to mute myself on that one.
I tried
Sam
to
Crow.
save you.
Yeah, I've been watching too much Sons of Anarchy. My bad,
dude. He was great. He was great in Gladiator.
Jim Crow era racism. Yeah, I'm not happy about our chairman comparing these kids to Jim Crow era racism. I think that was a really, really bad thing to do, and to continue down that path and to continue to look for reasons to vilify these kids because you were wrong in the first place is just asinine. And I'm not a fan. I hope everybody.
That seemed to be a point that everyone missed. They're like comparing the school, and it's like you're comparing kids that weren't at this event. It is like it's something totally unrelated, and you're like, oh yeah, this justifies like this guy getting in his face. Like it was really, really egregious how bad the media spun this.
Yeah, well, it's like the picture of the blackout game. Have you ever been to a sporting event? That's a completely normal thing. But several years ago, people did come out and say, maybe blackout games aren't a good idea anymore. Okay, that's fine. So school stopped doing it. Well, this picture is from 7 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're using it to vilify kids that weren't even at that school at the time. And it's just an ugly, egregious thing. Exactly.
Right, they're trying to say
I think the best though was did you guys see Kathy Griffin tweet?
Oh my God. We talked about it a little bit.
The 3-pointer thing where she's like, look at these kids holding up the white power sign at this Catholic school. And you're like, bro, it's a basketball game.
Right. Everyone
3-point sign.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Everyone replies to her with pictures of like Steph Curry and LeBron James doing it. Yeah. Like white supremacy.
I watch every single Warriors game. Go Dubbies. And I mean, that's a really common thing for the predominantly black NBA to do when somebody hits 3-pointer. So
it's just hilarious.
Well, and it just shows you how far away these people are. Yeah, out of touch from society. These people are. It's like, oh my God.
Well, it's like that, and it's like that any port in a storm type shit too, right? They're like, so first, people like were quick to like totally accept this narrative that was being thrown at us for what happened at the Lincoln Memorial, and then once it turned out that turned to obviously be incorrect, right? An inaccurate account of the events. Instead of, I got this wrong, people were like, okay, so let's just dig through social media with the woke mob here and see if we can find something to where I hopefully I won't have to walk this back to like, aha, check it out. Here they are making the white power symbol. So it turns out they are racist. And the people are like, that means a 3-pointer. And then, fuck. Okay, well, check this out. This is a kid in blackface. That's called a blackout game. That is also invalid. God damn it. Okay, well.
Right. And they tried like pointing to other kids that were at the rally, and they were like, look at these kids. One of them said that, like, I don't remember the joke.
Oh, no, one of them said it's not rape.
Yeah.
If you join it.
But it was totally different kids. Like, they went to a different school. Like, it wasn't anything related. And they're like, no, they definitely went here. And it's like, no, they didn't. I felt like it was like Adam Sandler with Billy Madison, or the bus driver's like, yeah, man, those kids were really racist. It's like, nope, no, they weren't. They're like, well, not them personally, but a guy they knew. Super racist. Yeah. You're like, still no, they weren't. Yeah, like, no, what you could imagine would be like if they were.
Like, no, I can't.
Well, then they put this video out. Walking down the trail from the Abraham monument. I don't know if you guys saw this. And there's a group of kids wearing red hats, and they yell MAGA at them. And you only get the footage like for the last 3 seconds of them yelling MAGA, so you have no idea what they said when you walk by, right?
Well, so the best part of that is the people are sharing this video of the kids yelling at the girl, and it's like you said, Josh, like they only showed the kids yelling at the girl. There's nothing but before it, and it's the funniest thing is this came out like a couple days after the whole narrative was pretty much dunked on for the initial situation. And then this new video comes out that shows, like, have you learned nothing? Like, have you learned nothing?
Well, no, but it gets better. So they dug into this girl's Twitter, like, because the internet never forgets,
right?
And they find all kinds of racist comments by her on her own Twitter, dropping the N-bomb everywhere.
And everyone, the best part. That's not the point. That was a long time ago. It's not right, but the blackout game 7 years ago. Okay, all right, I get it. I see what we're doing here. That's fine.
This chest beating, it's this chest beating tribalistic team sport that politics is now.
Well, I think they've just been crippled, man. I think the media has they've run cover for each other for so long. I mean, they know they dominate every mainstream outlet, all the primetime channels and all that. It's like, they know they're going to run cover for each other, so they're just crippled. They can't. They don't know how to. They don't even understand what the rest of us are seeing in them.
Right. And now, I mean, to make everything so much better, I feel like the sweet vindication came when we heard that what was it? The whole opinion section of Huffington Post got canned, and then something like 15% of labor force at BuzzFeed got shown the door too.
I saw that. Yeah. Have you seen the meme going? Challenge meme. It's like the top one is all females in the boardroom, and then the second one is just empty.
Yeah. It doesn't get any better. I mean,
what's even worse, man? They are just the self-pity there. They're all tweeting to each other like, oh my god, we didn't deserve this. And if you're notice how every single one of them is like, if you're looking for anyone who's a writer in gender politics, and the one chick had a PhD in
romantic comedies.
That's what it was, a PhD in romantic comedies. And it's like, wow, maybe you should go learn to code. I don't know.
Look, if anyone is looking for someone with a degree and an extensive educational history in Sam Crow laws.
God, I'm never going to live that down. Internet never forgets.
It doesn't. But the good news is people do forget this podcast. So you're safe from there.
Sam Crow laws. That's just embarrassing.
Yeah, they'd have to listen to it to have dirt on you.
Jim Crow. At least once you guys typed it out in the egregious error. And fixed it on air. So
that's good. Okay.
But yeah, it completely descended, and then finally, when they had nothing, well, that hat's, and it's like, oh, well, at least you guys are finally admitting the truth.
Yeah, who sends anybody out in that hat? Like I said, any port in a storm.
Oh my god, I loved that though. All the people being like, if you wear a MAGA hat, this is what you deserve. And then all the comments on Twitter like, all right, cool, now do women in short skirts next.
God, I know. Well, it's just the point that
you were asking for.
They're putting themselves out there so much to just get wrecked at this point. Like, the arguments are so bad that people are just waiting on Twitter. Just seriously, kind of like AOC, just say something, because I know I'm going to be able to just crush you.
Meme you.
Or just to clap back with such intensity, because everything you say is literally wrong and dumb. Yeah, right, that's like TJ saying, that meme when they're talking about, you going back next time, do short skirts. It's like you walked right into that.
Right, it's just no recovery. Just delete your Twitter. Just move on.
You're done now. Yeah.
That's what happens when these people step outside their echo chamber, man. They literally think that they're like, oh, we have all these great arguments against libertarians, and it's like, no, you don't. You literally just no. I don't know, jerk each other off basically with these stupid arguments. Meanwhile, we're having to defend our points every single time we step outside in public. And it's like, you step in our realm for a minute, man, we're going to eat you alive.
Because libertarians don't even agree with libertarians. Exactly. All we do is talk to people that don't agree with us, even when we're talking to our own people, right? And so it's completely different than what someone from the left is going to experience right now. In the left right now, especially these people, they're going to their offices full of people that agree with them about everything. So it's just this constant confirmation bias everywhere. And then they start to go talking to people that, like I said, we don't even agree with each other. We no two libertarians.
Actually, at LibertyCon, Lou Perez was doing stand up, and I will say he had a great one liner here. He was talking about, he's like, yeah, we all love as libertarians. He goes, the only thing though, man, he's like, you ever talk to a libertarian? He's like, as another libertarian, let me tell you, it never seems voluntary. It never feels voluntary.
Right.
Actually, I'm the only real libertarian on the podcast, so I get it. I understand. Anyways,
okay.
So
that's great.
No, this all boils down to one thing. Desperate people typically look foolish, and that's what's happening right now. They're desperate. They're completely desperate to continue this narrative that anything that goes against their social justice culture is evil and terrible and wrong, and they're losing. They're starting to lose. That's what's happening, and they're getting desperate.
Well, people are just getting sick of the intersectional social justice bullshit. Like they got wrecked on that one. Like they got owned. They got taken to school on that one. They were wrong, right? Like you were wrong. The longer video came out, you were wrong, and people had a really hard time being wrong about it.
They really did us a favor on that one, though. I mean, of all the times to have a long video and completely exonerate yourself.
Oh God, I know.
Oh man, it's. I'm hoping that some people that weren't previously in our camp, or don't even have to be in our camp, they just have to realize that, like, my God, what they're being told by the media is just bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, it was real bad. Okay. So we gave adequate time to going over that. Let's get to what we're meant to get to with this episode. So before anything, I do want to let everyone know we're talking about on this episode, a different episode from a different podcast. And that is going to be, let me go ahead and pull it up to make sure I have it here. So this is episode number 362 on the Freakonomics radio podcast. And I listen to Freakonomics sometimes. I listen to a bunch of stuff. I listen to stuff that I agree with, and I listen to stuff that I don't agree with. But some of the stuff on Freakonomics I agree with sometimes. But this time I was listening to it, and they had Andrew Yang, who is a 44-year-old running as Democrat. He's running for president in 2020. And actually, TJ, you and Lance had the chance to talk to this guy at LibertyCon. He seemed like a nice guy.
I actually did not get to talk to him at LibertyCon.
Okay.
So Lance and Chip did the exclusive interview, so I have to make the plug. If you guys want to see it, go to Being Libertarian. It's pretty good. But no, I was actually a bit hungover and sleeping still. So.
Oh, okay. I got you. So you were still in bed by the time they were talking.
Well, we weren't supposed to interview him till the afternoon, and he changed it to like 8 a.m. So I got a call, and they're like, "Dude, you coming down?" I'm like, "Yeah, no."
You guys can talk to the socialist.
Yeah, let you guys deal with this commie.
Yeah. So we say that because he's so Andrew Yang has got some ideas. Many of them are I want to say they're like radical, but it doesn't
fucking crazy.
Doesn't seem so radical these days, but yeah, they're pretty insane. The largest of which is his freedom dividend. We'll get into that. But so if we're going to talk about this podcast, right? Let's just move through it the same kind of way that they move through it in the podcast. They start talking to him, and it's pretty much like unpacking his history, right? And so just to give you the basic rundown, like he bills himself as an entrepreneur. He started a job creation program and became very concerned about the future of automation through this program, right? So his whole program is like taking people from tech industries and getting them set up and ready to go into jobs and stuff like that. He became really, really concerned with automation displacing jobs. He became really, really concerned with how much society is accelerating the eradication of just the jobs for people, right? And it's creating it's creating poverty. It's displacing people from their industries and things of that nature. So he around I'm trying to burn through his history here. So around like the .com boom, he launched a charity website. It was called like Star Giving or something like that, which is supposed to be like somewhere for celebrities or something to go and they can donate to charities. .com boom kind of blew that out of the water. It was kind of dead on arrival from as best I understand. It only lasted about 5 months. So in that time, he was looking for something else. So he worked 3 jobs and he found one that stuck. And he basically was teaching and training people that wanted to get into business school. He became the CEO of that company. And he with GMAT testing, I think was, I don't know if you remember, TJ or Josh, you guys listen to this too. So he basically started doing that. He started running that company. And then he started another company called Venture America, where he takes college students and places them into jobs in the tech industry, right? Like kind of similar to what we mentioned there in the beginning. And he said the moment that he noticed, this big problem is when he was doing this thing, taking kids and getting them into places. And there was a company in Rhode Island. And every tech company, the goal is you want to get bought out, right? And when you get bought out, you get a bunch of industry money, and then you're cool, right? You get your payday and you can do whatever. So this company got bought out, and they basically, the person that bought them out said, look, we're really interested in you, but you got to move. You can't be in Rhode Island. You got to go from Rhode Island to, come here and probably like San Francisco or San Jose and Silicon Valley, something like that. And he talked about how the loss of the 100 employees in Rhode Island was like a big hit, right? And he kind of talks about, like, if you succeed in Detroit or Rhode Island, the primary goal is to move away from those places and to go to a different city. So like the way he talks about it, and I'm sure you guys notice this too, is he uses very dramatic language, like eradicated, dusted these jobs. But I guess the thing, look, 100 jobs isn't the smallest thing in the world, but did anyone else notice that he's using like very, very dramatic talk about like 100 jobs?
Yeah, he's the sky is falling guy, man. And that's, that's how he justifies his policy points is by trying to make people believe that the sky is falling. The state of Rhode Island is like a far left state, like super hardcore, like failed democratic policy state. And they're losing jobs over there all the time, man. It's a constant thing.
He was talking mad shit about a few cities, Cleveland being one of them. And from Cleveland, I was like, man, I didn't feel too good after listening to that.
I don't think Cleveland will be voting for you, bro.
What was he saying about Cleveland?
No, he was just, when he was saying, he's like, yeah, he's like, you have these rundown places like Detroit and Baltimore and Cleveland, and no one has any jobs. He goes, and it's because anytime you do get a job and you do get a company off the ground in Cleveland, you get bought out and you immediately have to leave. And I was like, hey man, fuck you.
Well, okay. So not only that, but like it's not as if it's he's totally off base, right? It does happen, but he's making it sound like it's like happening at like cataclysmic levels, right? And the frustrating thing is when you're listening to that, he's sitting there and he's saying like, yeah, okay, this is a big problem. And then he turns around though, and he like tries to, he starts talking about something else and like people having displaced jobs. And he's like, well, there's just not a lot of tech jobs out there because these companies, they run lean and mean. Right. And so they run like small, but it's like, fucking wait, pick one. Well, hold on a minute, guy. Like first you're sitting there talking about like, oh, this widespread, these jobs that come there and then they leave. But then like 10 minutes later, you're like, well, but the teams aren't very big anyway. So
he does that quite a bit. He does that later on when we get further into it. Yeah, he does that with quite a lot of things. But the other thing is, the one thing that I hate is he constantly, it's all about tech. You notice like when he talks about his other ideas, it all revolves around tech.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand, like, what is wrong with someone being in manufacturing? What is wrong with that? Like this manufacturing is just like dead in the United States, that we don't quote make anything anymore. It's just not true. I don't know where he gets it. Yeah, it's not, like, for example, just anecdotal evidence. I know I work in the freight industry, and from Cleveland, we have one of the busiest terminals in the country. I think the only one that's bigger than us is like Miami and Atlanta, and it's like it's because there's so much manufacturing around here still to this day. So this lie that like, oh, it all just dried up and everyone just moved to tech or got poor, it's just not true.
Right. Yeah, it's bullshit. A lot of his stuff, like I said, it revolves around this sky falling narrative, and even a lot of the stuff that he talks about automation. I used to work in a plant that makes robots that do these things, and the rapid growth of automation is not nearly as much as some of these skies falling philosophers say it is. Not even close. So. Well,
and it's not only that, but he totally fails to. It was a tough podcast for me to track because I'm sitting there taking notes, like writing down what I think are arguments, and I'm like, wait a minute, he can't be making it that easy, right? Like hold on, right? Because he'll go and he talks about like, obviously like all of his ideas always fall back on like the government a government responsibility, right? Like it's not like he wants to do these things and put them in the private sector, right? These are all government policies and programs, and he talks about automation in a way that, like, you know, it's this dirty, horrible thing that is destroying these other jobs. And what's crazy is, like, he completely ignores how a lot of the state's current efforts to protect against automation is speeding up automation. Right. So, like, you look at California, right? Like the $15, the fight for 15, right? So, like, you see, they start saying, like, okay, well, minimum wage is going to increase. And then all of a sudden you start seeing kiosks in fast food places,
which are super inconvenient, by the way, if you haven't used one.
Like self-checkout and shit like that. No, like, I'm sure it is, but it's just funny. It's because it's like, you're not noticing, like, your very efforts to protect people are the efforts that are accelerating the thing that you're trying to protect people from.
Right.
It's just there's a lot of stuff. Like,
so I used one of these kiosks at a Taco Bell recently, and
oh, they got them in Taco Bell.
Yeah, it's great because you can just make everything special without having to tell somebody and them having to understand what you're doing. But I asked, everyone was standing in line at the kiosk. No one was standing in line at the counter.
Right.
And I asked the guy, I said, so is this helpful for you? Is it, I wanted to know, like, is it helpful for you guys? And he's like, look, we haven't lost any employees, but now we have enough time to make everybody's food quickly. And it's actually fast food, and it's faster for us, and we don't have to man the counter. It's great. So, I mean, it's actually helping the employees, at the end of the day, which is what automation does. It helps people, and these people are always talking about automation and how it's killing jobs. It really isn't. They've been saying that for 30 years, that it's soon everything's going to be automated and we're not going to be able to have jobs anymore. That's just bullshit. They always make new jobs. It creates new jobs. So even automation creates new jobs.
It does. It's one of the core tenets of automation. But so.
Sorry, tangent.
No, it's fine. No, that's good, because it plays into that whole mindset of everyone thinks that consumption is what pushes the economy, and they don't realize that automation helps production. And if they realize that production is what kind of is the foundation of the economy, it would go a long way. But pretty much everyone's economically illiterate.
Everybody, even those who are literate in economics. Pretty much illiterate. I mean, that's how it works. It's all big. It's all big crapshoot, anyways, right?
All right. So anyway, so he, So before we move on, though, I'm interested in this. So he talks about, obviously we're talking about automation, the big bad boogeyman, and he does talk about the freight industry. I feel like whenever people talk about automation lately, the freight industry is like the big one that everyone's talking about. And the thing specifically that people are really worried about, and TJ, I really wanted to discuss this with you, is self-driving cars in the freight industry. Everyone sees this as a doomsday on the horizon. And I consider you to be an intelligent individual. I wanted to hear your take on this, on just that whole topic of, because like Tucker Carlson basically became a communist.
Oh, I know his rant about how he wanted to ban automatic driving trucks.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh my god,
how do
people don't realize that when it comes, if you see some of the prices that people pay to ship freight around the country, it's not cheap. It's especially when it comes to, again, as always, as libertarians, the regulation involved. You want to buy fuel for your semi, you need a permit in every single state. It costs money. You need to, the regulations that go with the trucks, how much they cost now because of emissions regulations. Shipping is not cheap. So if you can cut that down, that's going to help tremendously. I just saw an article today that Walmart is hiring like 800 new drivers, and they pay almost like $90,000 a year. And it's like, yeah, that would suck if those 800 drivers lost their job, but they always want to complain about helping the poor people. It's like, well, what if Walmart was able to cut its prices by another 40%? How much would that help people that are going paycheck to paycheck right now? Pay for food, clothing, things like that. They just like ignore this entire other side of the argument.
Though they're also, look, the robot trucking industry is booming. Google, I think Google and Tesla are both working on making it better. But I just read another study recently where they went around and asked all the truckers if they were worried about automation, and there was a small minority that was actually worried. The large majority of truckers do not think that robots can do their job. So,
well, unfortunately, that might be their downfall, though, because those guys might end up being 60 years old and they can't retire yet. And then they're like, "Oh yeah, you're on your ass," and they're like, "Oh, well, now I'm unemployed. I need government. I need a UBI." Like,
well, that's
like
Yang's argument, right? If you ask Yang, he's sitting there saying that he has friends that are in the industry, and they would respond to that kind of market behavior by grabbing their guns and going to their employer.
Yes, he did say that. He goes, if you think a bunch of truckers are just going to roll over and lose their jobs instead of grabbing guns and marching on Washington, I'm like, Jesus,
because that happens a lot.
He acts like it's all like one thing too. Like it's just gonna be every truck driver has a job, and then the next day, every single trucking company just buys. I don't know how. I mean, you need millions of trucks, basically, because there's 3 million truck drivers in this industry.
Well, this is
2 million in the United States. 2 million,
whatever.
This is also like people all the time talk about the stuff like Andrew Yang talks about when they talk about, here's all the people that have jobs that are going to get displaced by automation. People have been worried about that forever, right? And meanwhile, unemployment's at 4%, right? And so when we get up to like double digits, then maybe we can talk, but like we're not even close. This is Yang's idea that like one day you're going to wake up and it's like, well, the robots are here. Sorry. Like,
well, so yeah, exactly. Like everyone, you're just gonna have like 1 million people unemployed. Just like, oh, I lost my job yesterday. It's like anyone who's worked in a trucking industry knows that these companies aren't trying to like update their fleet that quickly.
Right.
That's usually not how it goes.
Well, and in that same study that I read about where they talked to truckers about being worried about automation, a lot of truckers came to the trucking industry because of losing their jobs to automation in other places. So at least they're already kind of, ready for it. Right?
Yeah, right. It's not their first go around with this. So
I mean, they've already dealt with this.
I can see that. I can see that. But it's just this thing that's why part of me thinks that, this Andrew Yang guy, like, I mean, he seems nice, but I mean, you have this small problem, which Vinny, you put it very nicely, where it's like, it's just not a thing. We're at 4% unemployment. We've seen industries come and go for hundreds of years. And you're just yelling, like you said, Josh, with the sky is falling. It's like, am I really supposed to take you at your word, or how am I not supposed to think that you're just trying to use this as a power grab? I mean, look at what they're doing with climate change. It's like, oh my God, it's
right. When we get to 25%, like, let's talk policy, but like at 4% and shrinking, I think we might be able to table it for a bit.
I was talking to the engineers that work on these robots when I used to work. Like I said, I used to work for a company that built them, and he's like, people have been screaming that the automation industry is going to overtake all the jobs in the United States for 30 years, and really it just creates more jobs every time they automate more things. It creates more jobs. It's really strange how that works, but people find new industries, and people are resourceful and start doing other things.
So there was a part of this podcast, this Yang podcast, that I caught, and I remember listening to it. I was walking to work and I listened to this part, and I'm like, I can't wait to bring that up on the podcast. But so he talks about the Industrial Revolution. I don't know if you guys remember this. And he pretty much sets it up like that folks like us, that libertarians or, free market advocates are lazy in a sense, right? And he talks about how, what would you do if someone because we say, it's the Industrial Revolution already happened. That's what happens, right? Like we make it through. And he was basically saying like, yeah, but if someone walks into your office and they give you an idea that's like some idea that we already had, before that led to all this stuff, you kick them out of your office. And he starts kind of like almost like arguing against the Industrial Revolution. I don't know if you guys caught this, but he's like, dozens died.
I totally missed that.
Did you catch this, TJ?
No, I do not recall that. I'm sorry,
dude. You gotta, if you can stomach it. It's somewhere in there. I forget what spot it's at, but he was like
dozens.
He was like, people are talking about the Industrial Revolution like it was awesome. There was a ton of hardship. Okay, dozens of people died. Dozens, right? Like look, this is not to devalue the lives of those dozens of people that may have lost their lives due to this. But like, look, if we want to focus on humanitarian, if saving lives right? Like avoiding death is our goal, right? We can focus on foreign policy.
And the medical industry. Really, I mean, more people die from medical malpractice than.
And all I'm saying is, you focus on some other areas, and you can do a lot more than saving 12 people, right?
Absolutely.
I thought that was funny.
Wow.
Anyone,
I can't believe I missed that. I would have died. I would have died last.
Yeah, anyone. Well, it's quick. He does it quick. So anyone that listens to this and they go and listen to the Freakonomics episode, go ahead and keep them ears peeled for his. We lost dozens
of people have died.
Sky is always falling on fire with Andrew Yang. But so let's talk about his big hairy policy, and that's his freedom dividend, as he calls it. And what's gross about it too is they're like, and Lance even talked about this. They're like, oh, hey, good marketing. Freedom dividend sounds nice. Right?
Yeah, he even admits that. He's like, it pulled the best with our audience. We found that when we use the word freedom, libertarians just tend to be stupid enough to be like, hey, that sounds good. Let's go with it.
Yeah, you son of a bitch. Like that.
Don't you try to use freedom against me?
I know, you motherfucker.
How dare you?
It's like the, God damn it. Like nice Patriot Act, dickhead. Son of a bitch. And so this is going to be the freedom dividend is going to be $24 trillion or 24 trillion. Whew, 2.4 trillion. And just to give you guys a frame of reference, our listeners, so the federal budget right now is $4 trillion. So the freedom dividend is more than half of what we have now for the federal budget. And the first thing that he advocates as a way of raising this money is a value-added tax, basically for big data and big tech. And he estimates that this will give about $800 billion. And this is while completely ignoring the effects of a VAT, right? And so the really frustrating part about his VAT thing is it's like he makes the argument that like all these companies like Amazon and Google and everything, they're getting past having to pay those taxes, right? And so he wants to find a way by putting a value-added tax somewhere along the line on their algorithm or somewhere along the line on something, right? And to where they can't avoid that tax. This is just a bad, I mean, I can't.
So here's where I'm going to actually kind of part ways with you on that one, because actually I did get a chance to sit down with Jeffrey Myron, the Harvard economist, who debated Andrew Yang at LibertyCon. Yeah. And that was one of the points that he actually conceded behind closed doors. He didn't concede. He just said, I asked him, I go, is it even plausible to raise that much money off of VAT tax and everything? And even Jeffrey Myron said, yes, that is not implausible that he'd be able to raise that much money through a value added tax, although it can't be solely focused on the tech industry. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Vinny, but didn't he say he was planning on just like he said, like the big five or something like that, tech companies?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't doubt for one. So my thing is, I don't doubt for one bit that he can raise it. Like, I think it could be there for sure. Well, I mean, obviously, like as a libertarian, right? The argument isn't can you raise the money? It's the effects of what raising this will do, right? Like companies never just take a hit and they're like, well, we're just gonna make less now.
Yeah, we'll just give that money. It's just gone forever. All right.
That doesn't happen, right? And so, the result is going to be things that are free right now will continue to not be free. In situations like Google and stuff like that, like I can absolutely see, I don't think Google will ever end up costing money. Like it'll like charge you to Google, but like, so Google does a bunch of other stuff with like advertising. So you can expect if you're doing like advertising, you're probably gonna have to pay more for your advertising space, right? Because they're gonna have to carve that margin out of somewhere. And if you're doing like AdSense where you host ads, you'll probably make a little less because Google's gonna take a little more. Right. And so just to say that like there's no effect of this whatsoever, like because the way he presents it's like, this money comes in, boom, paid for, good to go. And there's no tertiary effects, I think he's
going to fuck up the internet. Andrew Yang is going to fuck up the internet.
Well, what's weird too is he talks about it. And so like Dubner, Stephen Dubner is the guy that he's the host of Freakonomics. So he's posing some arguments. He's kind of like trying to play devil's advocate when he's talking.
He gave him some decent pushback.
He did. And one of his arguments is like, well, the freedom dividend offers to give everyone $1,000, right? And so I guess first and foremost, the thing that's weird, and I've always thought this was weird about the UBI, like just on the top, is like, if UBI is meant to help people who don't have a lot of money, why are you doing a universal welfare that gives a bunch of money to people that already have money? That's always something that's been confusing to me.
Yeah, I don't. Is it like a principled thing? Because they don't want to just come straight out and say, "Hey, listen, we're literally going to tax the rich a bunch and just give everybody that's not rich a bunch of money from you." Like, I don't know. Can they just not come out and say that it's strictly a wealthy redistribution plan? Like, I don't know. Saying it's universal is like, yeah, it's for everybody. It's fair.
Yeah, it seems super counterproductive. Like to their goals, right? Like, because you're wasting money. I mean, it's like he says it himself on the podcast. He's like, well, if you give $1,000 to someone that already has a bunch of money, they don't even notice the hit. They don't even notice that they have it. But if you give $1,000 to someone who doesn't have any money, it's life changing. It's like that. He just made an argument against giving people that already have a bunch of money even more money. Right, this is like a totally expensive
but I mean,
thing.
You know, the idea is that they're paying way more. You know, someone like Bill Gates is going to pay in $1 million and he's going to get 1,000 back, as opposed to someone that pays nothing and gets 1,000. I mean, it's
right. But I mean, look, when you're talking about something that costs more than half of the current federal budget, right? I think it's a valid question to say, well, why are you paying the guys that don't need to get paid, though?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just an optics thing. You know, he admits that he calls it the freedom dividend because of it markets better, and you know, saying that, oh yeah, well, we're only going to give money to certain people. It would raise some eye, like, well, that just sounds like you're stealing then. And it's like, no, this way we're giving it to everybody. It's universal, man.
Have you guys done the math on the $2.4 trillion and what that would amount to?
What do you mean?
Like, broken down in this dividend for, what is there, 300 million people in the United States?
Well, that's the number, to give everyone $1,000.
Yeah, it would be $1,000 for every. I forget what are the you have to be at least 16 or 18 to get it, and what was the high? Was it the high side? He said, I thought he said there was an age where you stop receiving it.
60 or something. I don't know. I don't remember.
But yeah, everyone that falls within that age range currently, yeah, it would cost like $2.4 trillion to give them $1,000 a month.
Yeah, and it ignores stuff about like I forget. I was going to go. Oh yeah, so Dubner, and sorry, I got lost in the weeds there with that giving people money that don't need a thing. But Dubner says, so if you give $1,000 to everybody, what about inflation? You know, which I think is a very valid question. So here's what's tricky, and this is one of the other. This, like TJ and I were saying, he contradicts himself quite a bit here. But he sits there and he says, "Oh, okay, well, see, you don't have to worry about that because inflation doesn't happen with consumer goods, right? You're seeing the inflation that's crippling Americans today is like in the medical industry, in education, and stuff like that." And it's like, yeah, okay, so it's. You're sitting there saying inflation is not something we have to worry about because inflation isn't a big issue with consumer goods because tech keeps getting cheaper, and that's precisely.
Yeah, he literally says TVs have gotten cheaper,
right?
So it doesn't. We don't have inflation,
right? So we need to tax those companies then. Right. So are you guys picking up what I'm putting down here? He's sitting there saying, they're like, oh, tech's getting cheaper, so let's tax them more. And that's somehow going to end up in not, it's not inflation. You don't think they're going to raise, like we said before, companies don't just take hits. And they're like, oh, we just make less money now. It's going to raise the price.
The other thing he says is that at one point he literally says that the enemy of a UBI is the human mind. I don't know if you remember that, because he's how... And he's talking about how we all just hate it because he said people tend to think in terms of resource scarcity. There's a fixed pie when it comes to all these resources, and people just don't know how to see it. But if you break it down, he literally does the complete opposite. So he says that it's wrong to think of resource scarcity as a fixed pie, but his entire basis for needing a UBI is predicated on resource scarcity when it comes to jobs. Yeah, that there's a fixed pie when it comes to jobs and fixed pie when it comes to labor. And it's like, oh, because of that, they're all going to get destroyed. We're going to end up with no jobs and no labor. And it's like, dude, what? Like, you literally just said that I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. Like, does he not realize how contradictory that is?
No, I mean, apparently he doesn't. So just all of this is, you could tell. I mean, please, everyone, listen to this podcast so you could be as frustrated as we were doing our homework to go over this. But so, just on top of that, right? So I'm always terrible at pronouncing this. It's a study that was done by, I guess, Deloitte, Deloitte.
Sure, Deloitte.
Yeah, Deloitte sounds like how it goes. Yeah. So they did a study on automation. It was done in the UK. And they found that automation, so one of the key core facets of automation is, in fact, displacement of jobs. Okay, I'm going to admit to that right now. Automation does displace jobs. Okay, so what this study found is for 800,000 jobs that were displaced or lost, right, to automation over a 15-year period, also concluded that there was a net gain in jobs to the tune of 3.5 million new jobs that came as a result of automation. And those new jobs that came about paid an average of £10,000 more to their employees than the 800,000 that were eliminated.
Shouldn't that just be obvious to people that just have eyes, though? Like, I don't understand. Like we have how many more people today in the country than we did when the Industrial Revolution happened, and yet we have more people have jobs. They all pay more. They're all more productive. Like, that's what automation does. It takes the bottom rung of, low skilled jobs and just adds a higher one somewhere else on the job ladder, and it's creative displacement. It's not destruction. Like, I don't know why. It just sounds weird that you'd have to do a study to figure out that more jobs have been created. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, stop the press. Like, that's
actually, I think there was actually more people during the Industrial Revolution, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, totally. Yep.
Except for those
population. Easily 1 billion people in the United States, but they all died from automation. Dozens of them.
Dozens of people died.
Dozens. And the Black Plague.
How did we even recover?
Clearly. I don't know. I'm sorry. That just seems weird. But the other thing that kind of bugs me is I hate when we have these like so-called thought leaders that just refuse to dig just deep enough into their ideas to realize they're contradictory. So like you mentioned it before, Vinny, he said like that the most expensive areas of people's lives are healthcare, education, housing. But he literally says things like, so I have a couple quotes here. He says that people are incentivized to move to urban areas and then they experience shortages in housing and that raises prices. But he never asks why a shortage in housing occurs. Like, right. Why is, San Francisco, like, why is the housing so expensive? Like, he just refuses
San Francisco is just absolutely, obviously San Francisco is just expensive because there's more people there. It has nothing to do with zoning laws in any way, shape, or form. Get out of here.
But he says the same thing. Then he says college has gotten much more expensive and the quality hasn't risen in the education. Okay. Why? Like, why is college more expensive and why has the quality fallen down? Like, these are questions that have been answered 50 years ago. And it's like, you expect me to believe this dude's a thought leader and he doesn't ask why? I'm sorry. It's hard for me to get on board with that, especially with healthcare. He said that with healthcare too.
Right. Well, the funny thing, I noticed that too, is with healthcare, he says, oh, well, healthcare is plagued by a broken incentive system. It's not at all like a marketplace. I'm sitting there in my car.
Yes, he did say that. He's
yelling like, why? Why do you think?
Why do you want to market there, but not in education or in the housing?
Well, and what do you think led to it being that way?
Yeah. I was actually surprised he said that because he said, he's like, yeah, lack of market involvement in healthcare. It screwed up the incentives. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, what? You're not going to ask why? You're not going to ask so why that is?
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is like whatever. Right. It's good. So he talks about this. And one of the interesting things I noticed is he when he talks about what happens to people when they get displaced from a job. And I thought this was another pretty funny contradiction is he says, so what we've witnessed is when people get displaced from a job, because he says that the argument is like, well, why don't you go out and just learn code or something, right? When some people get displaced from like a manufacturing job or something like that. And
or your job as a gender journalist or whatever.
Right. As a gender romantic comedy.
Romantic comedies.
Yeah. And he says that most times people don't do that. People don't go out and try to re-enter the workforce. What they do is they end up enrolling in welfare and they get chemical addictions and then they have they go and commit suicide and they have all these issues. Right. And like, I'm sitting here listening to it and I'm like, then so why is the answer more welfare? Right? Like if you're sitting here admitting that when people get like displaced, they go lazy, they get on welfare, they don't go and look for another job, and he's like, yes, more welfare then. That's clearly
gonna help.
Clearly what we need. And he turns to, and this is where it gets even more crazy, right? Because he turns to and he goes, he mentions Alaska. Right. So he's like, Alaska, we have this here, there's a dividend, the oil dividend, and no one can undo it. Well, no shit, no one can undo it. You're giving everyone $1,000 or whatever they give them from Alaska. But I went and pulled it up. So the things he's talking about being concerned with, right? Like chemical addiction, suicide rate, unemployment, welfare, he puts like welfare in a negative light when he says like they just get on welfare, they don't try to work. So I just pulled up some stuff. So we've got the age adjusted suicide rate per state. So Alaska is the second highest state in terms of suicides.
Do you have numbers over time though? Because I would like to just put this to bed that if I recall, suicide rates are actually dropping. They are not. I don't know why everyone thinks they're like skyrocketing. But over time, like they're dropping.
Going down a lot.
I don't have them over time. But I was just looking at addressing his argument of like, like people, they get out of work and they go on welfare and they get, suicide rates go up. And you go, look at Alaska. Alaska's great. And then I went and looked at Alaska, and it spends the second most in welfare of any state in the country, and it's got the second highest suicide rate. So maybe that's not what you want.
Interesting. You can't say correlation and causation there, but
no,
that's an interesting idea.
Well, it's certainly not. But like he's trying to. He made about as strong an argument, right? In his.
Yeah. He makes a lot of logical leaps.
Yeah. So it's just like with his own kind of logic there, trying to make those arguments. You could just look at some really basic data like quickly and see that like, well, these problems still clearly affect, the state that you're praising for. So it's like, there's no magic bullet here is kind of the point, right? That's not.
Yeah. It's these people try to dress up these statistics and make them seem like to prove their narrative, and it's like with the suicide thing. I always see that people, kids nowadays they'll carefully word it like saying things that kids nowadays are more likely to die of suicide than anything else. And it's like, yeah, but suicide's down. They just not dying from, smallpox anymore. Like it's just, they purposely word their studies to find a certain way. And I'm sure Andrew Yang's doing the same thing.
Yeah. And it's also I missed this too. Per capita, it's also the highest in homicides too. So
really, that's interesting. I figured Canada, or I almost said Canada,
right?
Alaska would be mildly a little bit less crime free, but
I thought so too. Because my whole thing that I gleaned from it is he was trying to say like, why can't we be a little more like Alaska? Because he sure tried to sell it that way.
He did. Yeah, he definitely did.
And then I go and look at it and it's like, who the fuck wants to be more like Alaska, right? You get the highest homicide rate, the second highest cost in welfare, and the second highest suicide rate. Like clearly things are not all, daffodils and rainbows over in Alaska. And like you said, I'm sure there's plenty of other reasons for it, right? But like he really made it seem like this is just do it. Like when he was talking about the VAT, every other industrial country is doing this, right? But every other industrial country does not have the economic power of the United States, who doesn't do that thing.
Exactly. I hate when people make that like, oh, we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have a VAT. And it's like, okay, and if you took the other 20 that do and add them together, economy's bigger. So
yeah.
Oh, cool. Are you guys familiar with Anthony?
Whoop. You cut out there. Say that again.
I said, are you guys familiar with Anthony Samaroff?
Yes.
Is he related? Is he related to? Is he related to Sam Crow?
I've been sitting here doing a bunch of study. He's going to be debating Andrew Yang for the negative on robotics will soon lead to widespread joblessness and the concentration of wealth. So that should be interesting.
Wow. Where's he debating him at?
I don't know. I'm wondering if it's because I think Anthony lives in Scotland, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
In New York later at the Soho Forum.
Anthony's coming to the Soho Forum.
He's gonna get his hard part. He's gonna get. We have to watch that.
Yeah, well,
that would be good.
Yang's assertive and he's confident, and so I'm sure he's good at debating. He
sells it well. Yes, he's very charismatic and he sells it very well.
Like, and that sometimes
he plays on your fears. I mean, that's a big thing for him.
Well, and sometimes that'll do it for you, right? Like, look at Sankunger or whatever, however you pronounce that guy's fucking name.
Chank or however, yeah,
Chank or whatever. And
you mean the gentleman that uses a name of a country that had 3 genocides?
Of course, of which he denies. Yeah, and then and he debated Shapiro, right? And like, by anyone looking that knows a thing or two about a thing or two, it's clear that Shapiro just fucking decimated that guy. But you can go on the YouTube video and people are like, "Oh man, Shapiro got wrecked." Unger or however his last, he literally was like, "But roads though. Like, what are we gonna do about roads?"
Remember when he was like, dude, just Google it. Just Google it, guys. It's like, dude, you're debating. Like, you're supposed to be the one with the information. Like, right. That's why we tune into you.
Like, you're debating Ben Shapiro of all people. Like, this is Mr. Bury You in Facts. And you're just going to tell him to Google it? Like, Gail, go home. Like, you're not even, you shouldn't even be on this stage. Okay, moving along. We're burning up some time here, so I'll get to this other stuff at the end. Now, one thing, I mean, we spent a lot of time, like, bagging on Yang here, but one thing he does mention that I think there's some merit to is he mentions how in society there's, like, we do have this problem with giving value to things that are valuable, but they have trouble getting like an economic market value. And he talks about like raising kids. Now this one resonated with me, and I can feel this, right? Like I get this argument. I am picking up what he is putting down. It is true, right? It sucks that a woman can decide I'm going to stay at home and raise kids, and that's just lost income essentially in this day and age in a household.
Why does it have to be a woman?
Could be a man. You know.
I'm just kidding.
Why'd you have to out me like that? But I mean, look, it could be
fucking toxic masculinity.
I know.
On full display here, Vinny.
I know. I'm going to go watch a Gillette commercial and I'll come back to the podcast here. But it's true though, right? So and he talks about some stuff, but you know, TJ mentioned while we were warming up here that it, like, his answer, I like the premise. I like him thinking about how do we give like monetary value to that sort of thing. I like that people are thinking about that. I don't like that his solution basically sounds like the labor theory of value when he starts talking about it. And he starts talking about like these the social tokens, because a lot of people look at his like the social, what did he call it, like social tokens or social whatever.
He called it social credit. Yeah,
social credit. And a lot of people look at that and they like draw parallels to that Black Mirror episode, and that's not exactly what he's talking about. Like the way he describes it is like, oh, you know, you say that you get a notification on your phone and someone's, you know, their cabinet's broken, right? And you go, okay, I'll do that, and I'll go and fix the cabinet, and then you get like these social credits for doing that, and then you can turn around and turn those credits into the government will give you money for it or something like that, right? And then they go on to talk about time banking, and that's when things get really, really Marxy. And I'm sure you.
Yeah. Plus, can we just address the elephant in the room? Like, when it comes to government programs, there's already a problem with fraud, and like,
right.
How like rampant would this program be with fraud? Like, all you have to do is go to your neighbor and be like, "Hey, my cabinet broke," and you go on this app, and then your other neighbor can come over and be like, "Hey, I fixed it for you," and then the government's supposed to give you money.
Right, and that's
it's supposed to be like a verification where like the one neighbor verifies the other one. That's how.
He's like, you give him a hug, take a picture of it. Yeah. Well, and then the thing too that's like, it's super nebulous about it, and you realize it could be nebulous because they go and they talk about this time thing, which is essentially the same thing but like run on blockchain. Again, I like the concept, but it's exactly what TJ just mentioned. You notice how nebulous it gets because she even starts talking about there's things that people don't put a lot, like social justice shit, and it's just, you can just already see it in your head of people like just drumming up work to do so they can.
Oh yeah, you even mentioned like your neighbor needs a ride, and it's like, oh, I dropped my kid off at school, I should get social credit. And it's like, okay, but you think of all the people are going to be getting the social credit, it might become worthless. Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly right. So it's like a cool concept. I'm glad that people are worried about trying to solve that kind of thing. I don't think that we're even close to that solution. I don't think that either of these things are close for those exact reasons that you mentioned, TJ. Like, I went over here, think about how many other bullshit ways people could come out to be like, oh, look, I fixed your car, didn't I? Yeah, I know you totally did. Let's take a picture of it and shake hands, get paid for it. We can do the same thing for me next week and I'll get my paycheck too.
Yeah, it just seems kind of, it's cool concepts, like you said, but at the same time, it goes back to the idea of you look at these people as a thought leader. It's like, it still seems kind of juvenile. It's like, really, this is your best thing. It's like, we're just going to pay people like everybody gets paid to just exist. I mean, we joke around and like, you should just pay me to exist. I don't want to go to work anymore. And it's like, but really, that's what you're talking about. Like every single thing you do should be have some monetary value. Where are we going to draw the line at here?
Exactly right. Like, like when you're going to talk about, and that's the time where he starts talking, he's like, oh, people should get paid for things that are valuable in their community, but they don't get paid for already, like journalism and green energy. It's like, what? Like journalists get paid? Like there are people making electric cars that I'm pretty sure they're getting paid for, right? Like
unless you work at BuzzFeed, I don't know.
I know. Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna beat that like a dead horse.
You know what would give me more than $1,000 a month? If they stop stealing taxes from me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's a great place to start. It'd probably be a lot easier. Well, that's another argument too, right? Is it'd probably be a lot easier for someone to be able to afford to have one half of the family stay home if they
weren't taking $1,400 a month from me.
Right. If they get to keep more of the money, that they're earning at work, it'd probably be a little, and like everything else we've talked about, right? Like if the housing industry weren't as expensive as it is because of the reasons that make it expensive, and all of the other things weren't as expensive as they are, if we remove the reasons why this whole podcast,
it's insane. I forget where the study, I read some study recently where it said like when you've taken all the taxes, so you have your income tax right off the rip, and then you have your property taxes, your sale taxes, all these, gas taxes. And they said like on average, the average person in the United States pays over half their income ends up going to the government. Yeah. In some form or another. I mean, you can't do anything. In
California, we pay more than that.
Oh, I would not doubt it.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And then on top of it, he wants to go take an industry that is actually gotten cheaper over time, and he wants to go ahead and add a value added tax to that to make sure. So it's just crazy because it's that if they added a VAT, it wouldn't come with removing sales tax.
No, absolutely not.
So it's like, and if it did come at like if they did say, okay, so we're going to take all this technology, we throw a VAT on it. We're going to remove sales tax. Now, what have you done? Right? You just replace one tax for another, and it's going to pay for the thing that the sales taxes already pay for.
Yep.
It's only a net gain if you add the VAT to the sales tax, and then it makes those consumer goods more expensive. Like he's talking about consistently get more cheap, and then if you only do it to big data, like these big five company, And
what sucks is that these people are never held accountable for their mistakes. So like you said, eventually the market is not going to remain stagnant. So it's like you put these changes in, it's going to adjust as it does. And then when these people end up that their calculations fell short, they're never like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Like we should roll this back, or like maybe I shouldn't be in this position to make these decisions. It's always like, oh yeah, no, like we just got to go further with it. Like it's a one-way train, and they never ever admit any mistakes. I mean, like we said earlier with the media, they will not admit a mistake. So it's just crazy.
The exact opposite happens. They're like, someone give this guy a Nobel Prize, and we need some more policy here to fix this.
Exactly. Who's lining up to tell us how we're going to fix it now? And it's like same thing with like they always talk about the tax. Funny little note for the audience here. Everyone's talking about these tax rates going up and how we've had it before, but we were going through some old notes. I think it was I forget whose article it was on Being Libertarian, but we found that there was court records going back, and they were interviewing the head of the IRS back in the year 2000. And everyone always talks about how we have these high tax rates back in the 50s and 60s. In 1960, with the millions of people that filed their tax rates, do you know how many people actually hit the top tax bracket because they were trying to hide all their money and not pay it?
How many?
How many people? 8. 8 people.
The golden,
in 1960, they interviewed the guy. It's in the court records, and I forget if you I'll have to link the article there, but it's on page 58 of the source that we use. And they literally said, they're like, so how many people actually filed for the top tax bracket back when it was, whatever, 91%, or I think in 1960 it already dropped like in the 70s. And out of the million, he said like 58 million people filed tax returns that year, and 8 of them, 8 landed in the top tax bracket. And it's like, what do you think is going to happen again if we raise taxes to 70% or we add this VAT? Like, you think people are just going to be like, whatever, I'll just pay it.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm good with having less money. I mean, he mentions it himself, right? Like the Google is already going. He's like talks about people and their tricks that they, these big companies have. You think they're not going to find new tricks? You think that
he tried. Donald Trump isn't even a real entrepreneur. I'm a real entrepreneur, and I know all these tricks that they're doing. He's like, oh, you don't think I don't know? And it's like, dude, no, you should know then that they're not just going to roll over.
Yeah. God damn it. All right. Well, we've had a good time here. I think that about covers it. He also had some information there. He had some interesting stuff about presidents and salaries and lobbying. I don't want to go too long, and that was probably the less interesting stuff among this. But I think like the moral of this story is like, you can listen to that podcast, and if you're not thinking I think a lot of people listen to podcasts while like they're going about their day, and I don't think most people listen to like economic stuff with a super critical ear like we do, because we're so into it
because we have no lives
basically. Yeah, for the most part. And like, we pick up on this stuff. I feel like to the average listener, though, like they're not going to stop and question this and go, wait, he just kind of contradicted himself there. Wait, if he's saying that welfare sucks and people, get chemical addictions and this, and why is he giving him more? Like, just be more critical when you listen to stuff. Because I have a feeling like a lot of people listen to this and it just flew under their radar and they're like, you know what? This sounds pretty good. This isn't too bad. And I feel like, Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, when it comes down to it, when it comes to the UBI, you literally just, in my opinion, I think my favorite argument is just, you cannot say that there's going to be a fixed set of jobs, and then on this plus on the other side of it, just say like, oh, but there won't be a fixed income when it comes to the money that's basically bidding itself up for prices and basically just undoing whatever good you're trying to do. Like, it's just impossible. Yeah. It can't happen. You can't have both of those. Are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, just crazy stuff. So go check it out. Give it a listen. Let me see if I can pull up the episode 362. Why is this man running for president? That's a great question, Stephen Dubman.
That's a good question.
Why is this man?
That is it. I wonder if they meant to do that, huh?
I don't know.
People need to put more thought into who they, I don't know, choose to elevate as their thought leaders. I mean, not even just with Yang, with like AOC, and we see it rampant in here.
Well, we did it with Donald Trump. I mean, it's the same
exactly
thing. Trump came on the scene doing the same shit. He said, the sky is falling. This is an emergency. It needs to be taken care of now. He's still doing it. This is presidency. That's what they do. They feed off fear and hope and change. And those are the things that get people to come vote for. And that's Andrew Yang's just taking it to an extreme,
Well, he is good. His sense of urgency is right there. I mean, he's selling it. So
what's crazy is how all these people are like able to be so wrong, and it doesn't shake any of the public confidence in them. Like, it's like
tribalistic team sports, bro.
Dude, like,
yeah, and they say, well, it's because they say it with such confidence too. It's like, oh my god, he's so wrong, but he's just so confident in himself. Like, he must be right.
Like, Trump constantly is getting like this, just shown it, like handed his ass on all the shit he's wrong about, and like AOC is just constantly just wrong after wrong, and the base just gets stronger. Unreal. More critical thinking, people. Come on, America.
Yeah, we need to take some notes on how to do that ourselves.
I know, right? I'd be so much better at debates if it like didn't even matter. You're just like, no, listen. It's fine.
Just because you'd be in jail and you just drop the mic.
Right.
It's all you need, man.
Move to Somalia. Thank you. Where's my medal?
About time to go.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Finally going to take that offer.
Yeah.
On to Somalia we go.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything anyone wants to cover before we get out of here?
No,
that about does it. That was
don't vote for Andrew Yang, please.
Or don't vote at all. Boom. Had to say that one. Had to.
There you go.
Hey, shut up.
No, okay. All right. Okay. We'll debate that between you two on another podcast. But yeah. So go and please check out the Being Libertarian Facebook page. Like I said, sort by video, and you can see some interviews there by TJ and some others. We still have some to upload. So keep an eye on the Facebook page for that, and you can see all the fun interviews that we did there. Or I should say they did. I was not present at LibertyCon, but you get to see all the...
Yeah, I'm not even sure you're a real person, Vinny, at this point. Like,
He's really not.
We'll meet sooner or later. I was in New Orleans, man.
I'm doing both voices right now.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. We'll cross paths sooner or later. So, okay, cool. Well, to my guests, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for coming and talking about Andrew Yang with me. And to everyone listening, thanks a bunch for your time and listening to us talk about Andrew Yang. And whether anyone likes it or not, we will probably be back again.